This is TWiT.
You know, anyone who runs a web application or owns a service knows that APIs or application programming interfaces are the lifeblood of the thing. Now, without those things, information couldn't flow to and from servers, between services, allow easier for them to actually easily communicate information and automate interactions with applications. Now, how do I know this? Well, I've built APIs for about 20 years, and I own the Microsoft Office APIs for extensibility. So I can tell you that they're kind of important, just a bit. Now, this particular bite takes us back to 2014, where it was widely assumed that no one can use copyright law to restrict APIs use. Now, if there was an API, you could use it unless it was secured and you didn't have access to it. Now, the Federal Circuit Appeals Court changed that in 2014. Oracle had sued Google, saying that they violated copyright law because they re-implemented APIs from the core Java programming platform or language. Well, the court ruled that they did, in fact, violate copyright law, and this was hallmark. We all know that the purpose of copyright is to encourage creativity, but while software is copyrightable, assigning copyright to a method of accessing that work limits creativity and gives too much control to a copyright holder over its works that are already in the stream of commerce. Now, this past week, Google is actually petitioning for this judgment to be reversed. The biggest reason is that if APIs can be restricted by copyright, then every single computer program in this world would have to spend money fixing themselves. Plus, there would be a new type of lawsuit coming to the courts from here on out, dubbing it API copyright trolls, and corporations would be able to sue you for using their APIs. Now, I don't think that that's good at all. So I want you, first, before I get onto my soapbox about this, I want to bring you guys in here, starting with Curtis. What do you think here? Is it reasonable to say that an API in which you interact with it and you've used it on your application for a while is now you're not open to be sued for that? You can actually be prevented from using that. Now you have to go change all your software to do that?
Lou, I think that this is one of those cases similar to the many times we've talked about software patents. On the one hand, I don't think that anyone would argue that software is deserving of no legal protection whatsoever, that once you write software, anyone can take your code and use it any way they want. On the other hand, figuring out which of our existing intellectual protections work best for software has been something that we've been struggling with as long as I've been in the industry, and that's well over 30 years. So on the one hand, I think you're right. If the courts uphold this idea of being able to copyright APIs, it's going to have a profound impact on the industry, because all of a sudden these interfaces that we thought were there to enable communication between different applications and to enable interoperability between apps, services, and applications would become profit-making and revenue-generating devices. And that's entirely different. On the one hand, I do hope that the courts rule that using copyright to prevent someone from using an API is wrong, and using copyright to prevent someone from including an interface to a service or a program is wrong. On the other hand, I think that at some point, legislatures, and let's be really precise, the federal Congress is going to have to get involved and come up with some way of protecting software-based intellectual property without stifling and destroying all the ways of business that have evolved around current understandings over the past 4 decades.
Right. Now, I think for me, I mean, obviously APIs make it easier for, software and services to communicate, to interact with an app. Now, some of these services, like I would say Google is a pretty good example of this. They tend to hide their mode of operation by either encrypting it or using different protocols like protobufs to make sure that the data going over the wire is hard to distinguish. And so people really can't use those APIs. They can't really determine what's going on because things are kind of hidden away But if people try to use them, they couldn't because they just didn't know how to. But now they're saying if people figured it out, they might want compensation for that. Now, Google is obviously going against this, but we're saying that other organizations could possibly do this, like Oracle and so on. Now, Cheebert, I want to throw this over to you. APIs are used in networking and IT industry all over the world. Now, what if Cisco said one day, hey, we're now going to charge you for you to use our APIs for your tools, and we'll sue you if you don't pay? What would you do?
I'm actually going to go with the nuclear option and say, hey, no, I can't do it anymore. The reality is APIs are so interwoven into the current, the modern internet, that if all of a sudden we had to pay to use them, we might as well go back to the World Wide Web of 1989, 1990, back when Tim Berners-Lee at CERN invented the World Wide Web. It had no connectivity. Heck, it wasn't even really able to display even pictures, because pictures require an API, to show off different types of, compression. And the reality is we need APIs. APIs are so important. Amazon needs them. All your shopping, anyone that goes and tries to buy a airline ticket nowadays is using a whole set of APIs. Heck, even places like, say, United or any of the major airlines are actually using a whole lot of APIs. That, a little travel app so you can use your app so you can log in. Well, there's an API to generate those QR codes. So my opinion is, Cisco, Amazon, everybody. APIs are so integral to the internet that if the court case is upheld, kiss it goodbye. That's my opinion.
Right. Agreed. Now, Heather, I want to throw this over to you as well, because you work in the land of Wi-Fi, and tools in IT. They use APIs they would be useless without these things. Now, if they were now copyrighted, my guess is prices would skyrocket, and if companies weren't wise and didn't actually pay up, they could be open to attacks. Is this something that would affect that industry as well?
Yeah, it actually hits me where I live in a couple of places. To go back to what Brian's point was, as soon as he had me at Amazon, anything that means that I don't have to interact with an actual live human being any more than I have to gets a thumbs up for me. So I don't window shop. I use Amazon. So they've got my attention on this. But to your point, and I'm not a coder or a programmer. I use the APIs, but I only know a little bit about how the behind the scenes work for them. We can't do our jobs without these OS tools and these Wi-Fi tools. And on one hand, some of them, because they're very specialized and they sort of have you. Some of these are hugely expensive already. So to make them more expensive would be a problematic. I think we'd end up having to we'd be back to the backpack full of individual devices. That's nothing would be integrated. So trying to make reports or get anything, get real useful information is going to be a real problem. I would like to do a shout out in the Wi-Fi world. The grandfather of all and a hero to our industry, Adrian Granados. He does tools that he almost essentially gives away. So if this affected him, it would just, all of that would go away. And these are tools that I use every single day, even out here in the middle of nowhere.